Right, so we go down to the union of that the union of Bittul the Chochmah was a Bittul Davke Mitad. What we saw was called a Yediyah Davke. In other words, agam that the Bittul of Chochmah is Riyas Hamahus Elokus. Arizeh b'chinas Bittul Amiti Mikol Mokem. Is a Bittul Shemetada Yediyah Davke. We're holding on Tov Samach Gimel, a little more than 2/3 of the way down the Omud. Ze Keili V'an Vehu. It's one on. That's a teach from the Shloah Kodesh. What he teaches that Ze Keili V'an Vehu. So the word V'an Vehu makes Ani Vehu. It's one on. That he teaches in the Pasuk, the Shloah HaKodesh, that he teaches that if it's Elokei Avi, Zeh Keili V'anvehu, Elokei Avi V'Reima Memenhu. If it's only Elokei Avi, that your whole kesher with Elokus only mitzad tradition and what you want Kabul from your forefathers, then V'Reima Memenhu, he's all the time higher than you. He always remains above you. I believe it's Zeh Keili, Zeh is the unit from this. Zeh Keili, that you're misbeinen and you have a knowledge in Elokus, and you say Zeh, then Aniva Hu, V'anvehu becomes Aniva Hu. So that's the text that the Rebbe is referring to. If it's Zeh Keili, if it comes in even from Gilui and even of Yediyah to the Adam, then it becomes Ani Vahu. Da Bittul hu b'chinas Ani Vahu Chad. That even though there's two entities, there's the Adam Lamata, what he's the Ani, and there's the Hu of the Eibishter. But it's well known that Hu is indicative of the Helim, something which is Behelim and Mudal Gamre. You call it Hu. And nonetheless, and Ani is Tachlis Agila Eitzel Adam. Nonetheless, they are Nivahu Chad, they become one. And he becomes a bottle with Nichlal in Elokus. Nonetheless, Mikol Mokim Zehu Davki Adidei Shezeh Keili. This Zeh is Gilui, and Keili becomes my Zach. B'chinas Yediyah. A commission is Boli, or Perek Lamed Ches, or Perek Kuf Samach Gimel. The road there is Masbet, that's the Mila, the Bittul of Chochmah. That it even though it's a Bittul Etzem HaMahus, and a Bittul Amiti b'chinas Bittul b'Metzias, but that's a mile of Re'iyah. Nonetheless, the Etzem concept of Re'iyah itself is a form of Yediyah. When you see something and it's known to you, and it's Pagolo. It's not just a union of Emunah Bilvad, like we saw earlier, the reference to Emunah Pshuta. But Emunah Pshuta has its own milas, but it's not a union for Yediyah. It's not a union of now, not to confuse that word with the of Yediyah with the union of Asoga. That was the point we made at the end of the last class, that the union of Asoga is another idea. Or that's the union where the mensch is already masig, a union al pi sichloi hu. And that's got all the Hagbolas of Seichel and the Hagbolas of the Odom mitzad Kisrein Sichloi. Mashenkin, the union for Yediyah means an information which comes in an aware fashion. The mensch becomes aware of it, even to the point that he can observe it, Baruchnias, he can see it, even from Re'iyah. But it's not a union of understanding al derech ha-seichel. Therefore, it doesn't have the limits of derech ha-seichel. No, it's a union of Bittul in Elokus to the union that he and Atzmus Elokus become Chad. But nonetheless, it's in a form of clarity and Yediyah to the Adam, and that's what the Rebbe was masber over there in Kuf Samach Gimel. Or that's the union of the Bittul of Chochmah being Davke the Bittul b'Mahus, Mahus Bittul, even though it's a union from Yediyah Eitzel Adam. When that was even from Re'iyah. Im came Masha Chochmah Nikra Pele. Ein ze mitzad atzmoi. We're coming back to the thing that we developed in the whole chapter, that the inen van Chochmah is Gilui. Dafke in van revelation to the Makablim, albeit even from Mahus and in an even which is neither than Hasoga or Sokov, it's Gilui and Mamish Gilui. Whatever, he said that would nonetheless a posik calls Chochmah ki asisa fele. And we say that's referring to Chochmah. Whatever we call Chochmah Pele is not in the Etzem Inyan from Chochmah itself. Because the Etzem Inyan of Chochmah is a Inyan from Gilui. Rak mipnei she ma'alemes lo'era kesat. How can we use the expression that Chochmah is a Inyan from Pele? Or that we saw in the previous Drushim, the two previous Maimorim, actually three previous Maimorim, we saw this whole concept of how Chochmah Stimor BMS is a lavush, even though it's not an emesin from the slapshus, it's not an emes a helem of a lavush, but it's what we call a kisui atzmi, that the etzem pnimis hakeser, which is tainug, becomes a inyan which is kilu malim on itself, even though it's really hainu hak, but it's another way. It's like another ponim that it takes on itself, Regabi de Makablim. And that's what we saw, one of the big chidushim here in the Hemshech of Ayin Beis, that Chochmah, albeit Chochmah is a sphira b'fnei atzmai, and Chochmah is a gilui, reishis a gilui, b'elam atzilus, with all the inyonim of a le'idoch, the atzmias, mokev v'shoresh of Chochmah, is tainu. And the inyan of the koyach ha-Chochmah is really tainug in another form. It's how oineg goes into another, takes on another shape, as it were. But really the atzmius of Chochmah is oineg. But just at Legabi the Makabel, it's a form of yediyah which begins the whole process ultimately of teichel. Of the Emerson, Chochmah is not teichel. In Emerson, it's a lavush atzmi of the inner oineg. And therefore we see that that's what's mavur barichas in the famous Hemshech, Samach Tasamach. At the beginning, the Rebbe makes a difference over there, barichas, between oineg and simcha. And he says that oineg is ein tainug, is ein atzmi, mitzad the atzmi is dafke ein van aliyah, with dveikas, like we saw here, siluk, ein van oineg. Be'ilu simcha, the yerida into gashmi zagur, for dafke, yerida how do you call it, his batu, it's mit batei, dafke in the eivorim achitonium, well, that's the Inyan van Simcha, and he's much over there that the Inyan van Simcha is shy to Bina, Eima Bonim Smecha, Ve'ilu, Chochmah is shy to that Inyan of Oineg, and Chochmah is in effect an expression and an Inyan Gilui, a form of Kisui, Atzmi to the Inyan of Oineg. And therefore we see that when the mensch, and that's what we see the Chassidus stresses the whole time, sometimes almost to the point that it looks to be sort of, going almost beyond itself to tell you that the emes oinig and the emes fulfillment of a mensch is when he's misanig alidei Chochmah Elokis, when he understands the immediate sinin of Elokus, prefer how it is mitzad the Inyan from Chochmah. Mitzad the Inyan from Re'iyah the Chochmah, but this is the emes oinig, and there's no greater oinig and no greater tainug and no greater what you might call inyan in Chayei Adam Mizeh. That's Kilu B'negeh Elov. As an individual, this is the highest shleimus what can be. And therefore we see in many of the works of the Rabbeim, they're mafli the inyan of Isaskis Muskola is Dafke Muskola is Dafke the Loshen. And the inyan, because Dafke Ali say you come to the immediate oineg, or that lavush leads you in, because it's really the same thing. It leads you into the emsa inyan of oineg, and that's what he's masba over there. That's the whole inyan of samach to samach, reim ahuvim. That the whole inyan is ultimately to bring everything down lamata into the inyan of simcha, and so was the amshocha lamata mata of amitius, adveikas, and amitius iskashas. But all the inyanim it does alidei oineg davkin so the inyan from oineg and not simcha. However, that's what we could suggest that he means here, that the inyan of Chochmah how it is b'shor shoi is a lavush atzmi. Well, that's what he's going to say here. That it's really a'inim from oinig. And what we see by the great Bali Haskalas, that whenever they got a new Haskala, that they were their whole their Gesicht, as they say, their whole way of appearing altered. Mitzad the fact that oinig is a koech machif and a koech otzum, that it's several kilo alter the mensch altogether, and that's the famous Loshen in the Yerushalmi that Rabbi Abuhu, the Motza Tosefta Chadato, then Tzohavu Porno, and he became like, lit up, yellowed, I don't know how to use the expression, illuminated in his whole face. And if you look up in the Yerushalmi, I once looked up in the Yerushalmi, it's a pillar, a master. I stayed out the Rabbi Abuhu, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan, as well known. Rabbi Yochanan was a Rosh Yeshiva, and now so. They stayed, the Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Avu and some of the Talmudim were going b'derech. And Rabbi Avu went ahead. He went ahead with a couple of the other Talmudim. They went ahead to Kilbi, Vedic Zadrochim, V'chula. They went Parois, and they met up with a Matronisa. What a Matronisa means, a Goisha baroness, or a big knob from the Romans, of a Dafke Anakeva. They met up with her on the way. And she said, she met this Rabbi Abu, and she looked at him. She said, who are you, man? What's your business around here? And he said, I'm just going on the way. He said something not committal, and she said, well, I didn't know that there was any Seicharei Chazirim in this area. I didn't know that there was anybody who dealt with, used to sell Laudel to Orim Vacherim in this area. So he was taken aback. What she means. She said, I can see on you that you must be one of those Seicherim. So he was, to say the least, insulted Rabbi Abu by that, but he just sort of tried to know it's better not to get into trouble with these. So he sort of went on, and she goes further along the way. She's going back the other way, and then she meets up with Rabbi Yochanan. And he's surrounded by some of the Talmudim, and she says to Rabbi Yochanan, what are you doing? You guys are Yidden, what are you doing with, you got this Talmud that he's a Seicher Chazirim. So Rabbi Yochanan says, what's it the raya that he's how do you know? This is minor Talmud, the ones that she met up the road. She said, oh no, his face is all lit up, and he's all so illuminated. And she said, in this whole country, the Seichei Chaserim, they don't have any business. So she said, if a Seichei Chaserim sells something, then his whole face, lights up. He just becomes completely different. Mireiv Simcha, Mireiv Chedva, that he managed to sell something. So she said, he looks just exactly like that. So all the Talmudim were all barash. What sort of so Rabbi Yochanan just sort of nodded. He said, I know what happened. He said, Rabbi Avu must have found a Tosefta Chadato. He said, a Tosefta Chadato. When he finds a Tosefta Chadato, he just goes, he just lights up, and he looks completely different. Magushim Dike Kop, by her Magushim Dike Seichel, she thought that. But that reminds me of another thing, but if I would tell you that, then I'd be getting out of the boundaries of this class. But what it means is that you can't rely on the Magushim Dike Kop from a Goy. A Goy's Kop is Magushim Dik at the best of times, so you can't rely on it. You mustn't rely on it. But that's basically the.
She saw it, so she must.
Nobody. Yeah, so you're right. There's something that she saw. Yeah, she saw the difference. Yeah, you're right, Daniel. I mean, it's a defense of her that she was able to see that there was something very different about him, Yeah, but what I meant to Megushim was the way she touched it out. In other words, let's put it this way, that they're able to see things, so but the way they touch them out, you got to be very careful.
She used to say, she never saw a Yid before that. She saw a Goyim and she said, oh.
Right. In other words, you got to be very careful with the Goy touch the site. That's the whole trouble today. Anyway, let's not get involved. Erefa, says the Rebbe, והנה ליהו פרק, ואם כן, מה שהחוכמה נקרא פלא אין זה מצד עצמי, רק מפני שמעלמס לאור הכסר. It's not that she's מעלים to אור הכסר. It's not she's a הלם on כסר. והנה ליהו פרק ריש קוף ד' נסבור דהלם זה, שהחוכמה מעלמס אור הכסר, אין זה כמו לבוש המעלים. It's not that she hides Keser, ki ma sha'oinig nase beginnes chokma. That mamish, the oinig becomes a inish chokma, ubezehu mis aleim, and therefore the oinig literally hides itself in the in of chokma, but not in a lavush hamalim, because really it's hainu hach, and that's what the Rebbe says, that if you get into muskalas, you get so bound up with the Inyan Vaining that you can't possibly tear away. And that's the different stories and the different Inyanim about the great Balei HaSokas. Ve'im kein, a-helem u'b'chinas helem atzmi. Helem atzmi means that is really the etzem, but you just don't notice it because it looks different. Those are the taich helem atzmi. However, it's got in itself, as it were, a drawback that since that's the thing itself, it's not just something which is covering it, and therefore it's a very strong form of sosum, because that steamer is mitzad the very essence of the thing itself. And therefore you can, as it were, get lost. You can take the chitzenius and not be niknas ela pinimias. That's what he means, a sosum mitzad atzmoi. In other words, the way you have a lavush hamalim, and you are yechilas to take away the lavush hamalim, then you get to the zach how it is. Yeah? Over here, that lavush and the thing are really one and the same. They're really one and the same inyan. So if it hides itself, then it's hiding itself inside its own self. In other words, it's appearing to be another inyan. And remember, that's what you might call, it's even more than hide and seek, yeah? It's more like the etzem appearing in another oifen or another form, which is really the same etzem. What Lefizeh Kumto is that when the Eibishter made a man, and he made the whole Seder, the koiches of a mensch, he really began with himself. Or if we take it how it is in the Nefesh, he begins with the very essence of the Nefesh. Remember, the koiches are not, whatever the koiches are called tikkunim, or they're called ornaments. They just beautify what is the etzem. The etzem beautifies itself alidei the zinyonim. You're locking it up. Very good. So we'll promote you. So we might have thought of being introducing a knas. But if we see that, then we promote you. Erefa, come to it. That what happens here is that the etzem puts on another look at itself. Erefa, the same with a mensch. Your development of all your koiches begin with chokmah. Chokmah is the very essence of your etzem, just appearing in another way. That it is that the Eibishter with chokmah, he's just looking for another way to come down with his whole essence into you. And therefore, it's interesting that the Alter Rebbe calls in the whole of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe calls the Eser Koiches, he calls them Etzem HaNefesh. Ad kei kach, he has to, in Likutei Torah, the famous Lo Yisashbis Melech of that, right in the beginning of Likutei Torah, in Parsha Vayikra. The Alter Rebbe goes out of his way there to explain it. That's what I called in the Eser Koiches Etzem HaNefesh, בספר התניא, אין הכוונה שהם העצם ממש, אלא יש למעלה מזה שהוא העצם ממש וכולו, אבל אף על פי כן, קורוסי עצם etem and everything. He warns you that there really is a higher in the etem of this and the Yechida and the Rebbe says even Lamailam is the etem. If that's the case, then I'll call him the etem. Well, just say, this is a Dargish of an Ever. And then you want to write another sefer to tell people that there's another Dargish of an Ever. Okay, you call it the, Atzmius and everything, Atzmius is a simon. The Cholila V'chasi Alter Rebbe he wasn't writing something which was, misleading, or he was like making a Marimofim to another place. All that in effect is the Emer. The Eser Koiches are in effect the Etzem Manev. And therefore the Spheres, the Eser Spheres Lamaila, or they are Iu Chayeu Chad, Iu Gamayu Chad, and they are the infant Rosa de Mehemanusa, and all the Inyonim. The Eser Spheres are really Gilui HaAtzman. Olam Atzilus is the Eivishter. Olam Atzilus is not Cholin V'chas, a world. Olam Atzilus is the Eivishter. Now it's the Etem, how it begins coming down towards you, and it just puts on what you might call another phase of an Imson to the Etem.
Also is Eivishter. Everything's Eivishter.
Huh?
Everything's Eivishter.
Yeah. Everything's Eivishter.
So what's the big
what's
the big thing that here?
What we're saying is, exactly, that's what we're trying to say. And that's what the Rebbe said over there in Reish Kofei. That what he said is, that really, the Golus is the Geula. That's what we learned. He said, really, the Golus is the Geula. The Golus is another face for what is really the Geula. The real Etzem Elokus, right? It's just hiding inside this inner, which is not a lavud, it's kiluim in another form.
So this is the first time. What are they trying to say?
It's like that with everything.
Is this mime? The Nakud of this mimer is that this is the first madrega. So that's the shinui panim is it? It's the first time that's the glory of this shinui panim.
Yeah, it's all just.
This is the first time this happened.
It just changes of face. Yeah, panim, not even panim chadosh. It's panim. Yishtanes. And what's the famous lesson? There's another lesson that occurs. It's written taught by the in Pasha Koirat. The Alter Rebbe brings down in Lekutei Torah that there was this min that he asked Rav Akiva. Wie is he gegangen? And he said sometimes Eva said, how does it work? And Diva Shechina bein Shnei Badi Aren or something, and his molecule, it's Kveda, so Shemayim Vasorah. He said, how can that be? So Rav Akiva said, Moshe Lamar is Gedolos, Lamar is Ketana. Moshe Lamar is Gedolos, Lamar is big mirrors and small mirrors. So the Alter Rebbe says, that's not the pshat, the mirrors. The mirrors are not important. What do you mean what you see in the mirror? In my mirror, sometimes, I remember when we were kids, used to go into a circus, and all of a sudden you'd walk up and you'd see these mirrors, and you'd be huge, you'd be long, and you'd all be drawn on your face, it'd be about 4 meters long, and your goof about 20 meters long, and your legs and everything. Now all of a sudden you would come to another mirror, and you'd all be the other way around. You'd all be quetched, and you'd all be a few centimeters high, and all your faces all quetched. It's called Maris Gedolos and Maris Ketanes. So the Rabbi Akiva answered that min that way, and he said that that's Maris Gedolos and Maris Ketanes, which means it's all the same. It's all the same demus, but it's just it's a different form. That's what the answer is. That when the Avish are talking Mishnei Badiaran, or when he's in Olam Atzilus, or when he's in Akko, it's all exactly the same. It's just Maris Gedolos and Maris Ketanes. Remember, that's what's written here. And if I said that Rebbe V'hainu Shachokma Huba Madregas HaKesem Mamish. Chokma and Kes all the same thing. Why? Because Shehi B'Prinus Helem B'Etem. Now when he says it's Helem B'Etem, he means that the Etem is Misalim in that. So that's an emes Helem, Legavi the Makablim, because the Etem is doing that. Oh, but really it's not a Helem in the normal sense, because nothing is being Mailim or nothing. It's only that the very essence is changing its way of appearing Legavi the Makablim. So therefore he says, but there are klal aiku prince chok.
What's the difference between that and the Sosh and Besar Atzmo? What's the difference between Helam and
in other words, at the time, it's also Mitzad Atzmoi means that he's the one making the Helam, not that something is being malim on him that you don't see. You got that? So Mitzad Atzmoi means that he's making the Helam. In himself is the Helam.
So what's the difference between that and Helam Atzmoi?
Yeah, that's the idea of Helam. That's what he means by Helam. That the Helam is Mitzad him, not Mitzad Eizador. And that's only, the Helam is only the way, as it were, he's looking at you. But really, if you look at him through that way he's looking at you, then you're getting to him in the same way, because Oining and Chachma are all really the same models. It's just a difference in the way it appears to the Makabel. And that's what we mean, the Helam Mitzad Atzmai, not Mitzad Eizador. And the Fire says the Rebbe, it follows that the Iki and Erezu Chachma Stimoya. But over there, that's exactly what he said. He said that the etzem minim van oinek becomes chokma, and he said that the etzem itself, he said the etzem itself over there becomes chokma. And he brings a raya over there in the brackets. You remember we had it at the end of the Dvar Pele. But the Rebbe said that that's what it is. The koyach hamoilid is davki in the moya. The tafki, the koyach hamoilid, that he can have doirois, or that comes mitzad de'inu from atzmius hamoya. So he said, for words, that's a koyach ha'ein soch. Only the Evis can make a yesh miyah. In other words, when you give rise to when you give birth to a child, you're making a new whole material. You're making a new entity. It's never been before. He said that's only the koyach ha'ein soch. It works through the inyan hamoya. It goes through the inyan of the moya. Amamera, that's what he said. That's exactly that. Chokmah is a helem, or a way of looking at the way Atzmus looks at Lamata. And therefore, in your Chokmah is the whole etem, the whole koyach of the etem of the Eibishter. And I remember we were Medaich over there. That means and it's written in Perek Yud Ches in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says that Ein Seif is Shura B'Chok Mekol Mishiyeh Miyisrael. That the inyan from Chokma is Nimtze Shura B'Koyach. I'm sorry, Ein Seif is Nimtze Shura B'Chokma Shebenefesh Kol Echad V'Echad Miyisrael. And Mira Kumta, when you walk around, you're walking around with Atmas Eisav inside you. That's Piru. And so Nimtza, that the Shaila Eels wasn't with the Yumas Oilam. What are they? At a fair is we have to say, and that's what state in Toshin Aleph in a place, the Friedrich Rebbe, is Mazvah that the Umas Oilam, they also have a Nefesh HaSikliyas. And he said that Nefesh HaSikliyas is called B'Tzelem Elokim. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Choviv Odom Shenivra B'Tzelem. Chiva Yisrael Yidas Lo Shenivra B'Tzelem. Shenehem B'Tzelem Elokim also as Ha'odom. And then a few lines later he says Chaviv and Yisrael. So who is the Odom? Where's the Odom? So the Friedrich Rebbe writes that the Odom is the Goyim. The Odom is Umas Ha'olam. And they also have a inyan of Kilu, a inyan of Kisha Behem. Over by Zayas, but Tatlisa, Helen Vea, Hester, Achet becomes Mernit, inyan von Seichel Sheba, Inyane Oilam. Aber I feel by Zay, how does the Gemara say, Chokma Begoyim Tami? No, not the Gemara, the Medrash. Chokma Begoyim Tami, that there is a inyan for Chokma. Yeah. And that Chokma is also, that's Kilu, the Tzelem Elokim Sheba. And the ganze Sinne von Ayid is the Bonim. That's what he brings. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. The Mile of Yidden is the inyan von Bonim. In other words, that inyan von Atzmiyas Alavush is by Yidden, that's the Ike, and therefore that of course everything, that makes everything in him function. And if even your normal Seichel is really Ein Elokim. In other words, if you want, that's what it can be. That's what it can be. Therefore, I must say to you that when when those of us, we didn't really do what we should have done. Or those of us who heard the Rebbe speak, if you heard the Rebbe speak, then you knew that was Elokus. It wasn't. It wasn't just stam. You could hear Divrei Elokim Chaim. And the Maggid, he used to say, before he spoke, he used to say to the Talmidim, Yidden hert Seides HaTorah, hert Divrei Elokim Chaim. In other words, when a great person talks, and his whole inyan that he's gone into that link of Atzmias, Elokus mit Chochmah, and he's got into it, when he talks, it's just Elokus talk. I'm sorry. And there was Cholila. Huh?
Why
am I sorry? Yeah. Oh, I'm happy. Yeah. Gotta be careful, this guy. He keeps the clothes watch on him. Erefa, Lefisa Kumto is that Emes Chochem Batoira is when he talks. And there it's an amazing thing. So I'm sorry for getting aside a bit on these inyonim, but it's very important. That there's a sefer, the Mishkistim gave out a sefer about Hakel, about all the things that the Rebbe said about Hakel. So the Rebbe says that, Mamish. I knew it was a Kabbalah by the Chassidim, but the Rebbe says it, Mamish. The Rebbe says that when you hear from the Nasi Hador, when he talks, that's pink to say, the Yidden were listening to the Melech reading in the Torah, in the Torah, and when the Melech, he was a Melech Emes Al Pi Torah, when he read, that was Mamish the Abish the Torah, was Mamish, and that's what the Rambam writes in the Hilchos Chagiga. The Rambam writes that when they heard the Melech read, Kiyom Shanitna B'Sinai, or Ki'ilu Shoimim Mipi HaGevura. That's what the Rambam. So the Rebbe said, what is it? Ki'ilu Shoimim Mipi HaGevura. He writes over that when a Rebbe says, Amayim Chassidus, does Shechina Medavers Mitoikrei. I heard it with the
Shem אני חושב Isaac Mohammed
in other words, by you it's a pshita.
No.
I don't blame you.
There was a Maisa. I think it was about the Tzimah Tzedek and Isaac Mohammed and Isaac Mohammed. Isaac Mohammed. And who is his the Chassid?
Rav Hillel?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rav Hillel. He's a Bishas Rebbe. The Rebbe brings it over in the Sikha. The Rebbe brings it. Very nice. The Rebbe brings it in the Sikha. Behem Shekadas. The Rebbe brings it. Rav Hillel and he and Reb Peretz Chaim. They had an argument about the Pshat in Hamayim. They had an argument about what was the Pshat in Hamayim. So in the end, they agreed to be let in. I think it was the Mittler Rebbe or the Tzemach Tzedek, and they got in. And the Mittler Rebbe told him what was the Emes Pshat, and it was like Reb Peretz Chaim Nishbi Reb Hillel. It was like Reb Peretz. So when they got out, so Reb Peretz said to him, "No, you see, I told you so." So Reb Hillel said, "Yes." He said, "I heard." He said, "B'shas the Rebbe zogt Amayim ido shechina medaberes b'tei rein." Aber leach was a generation in the world. He said, "Megen mir sagen euch, uns megen mir euch sagen." He said, "Once it's gone out in the world, we're also allowed to say it." That can occur. Over B'shas he says, "Shechina medaberes b'tei." There's Poshas like Lefi zeh. Lefi what we're learning here, zeh mu'kach. Kach is a b'pshitas advarim. I know then, you got to be ein nogea b'shum davar. Cholila is nogea b'eizeshu prat. He's got to be nagia. He's got to be zayin. Hashoichet kosher. It's blown. It can be nice. It can make sense of it. It's blown. A Rebbe is pure. He just says over the Divrei Elokim Chai. Why sometimes there are big people that they think they differ and they can't really because they're chuzim ba'oid inyon. You understand? Em chuzim ba'oid dvarim. Keser, what's talking is a form of an agia kol shehi. When he speaks there. There we are, my gentlemen. V'hainu she'achokma hu b'madregas ha'kesa mamish. Even Helem be'etem In other words, it's the etem how the hell. I'm sorry. It's the etem how it's gone into hell. Or it's put itself. It puts on itself its own hell. והנה בדרך כלל, העיקר מבחינת חוכמת תימורה. מה שנסבור ליל סוטה מהג'ווה, וגם זה הרי הוא מבחינת עליונה דחוכמת תימורה, כמו שהיא מצד עצמוס המייצר. Remember, we reach a conclusion in these memorim that the emes mamutza is חוכמת תימורה. In the בחינה עליונה שבחוכמת תימורה, that's what is Makusha in Atik, in the Tzad Elyon, until we said Pnimius Abba, who Pnimius Atik. So he said, Avo Bechinas Ataktoina de Chokmas Timora. Kol Shechein Bechinas Chokma Hagluya de Atzilas.
Aikar, excuse me, with the Ikar, Bechinas Dercha Ikar.
Loi Yitakein.
What's the Ikar? It says, B'dercha Ha'ikar Hu Bechinas Chokmas Timora. What's the Ikar?
This Selam on the Atzmi. This is what the Atmi puts his face on in another way. Well, that's Chokmas Timor. And that's what we described as the union of the Mamutza between Atik and the Nevoim. מצד עצמם סמייצו, אבל בכין תקטיינה דה חוכמס תימור, וכל שכם בכין חוכמה הגלויה דה אצילס לא יתוכן לקרויס בשם פלא. Because it's all come down into the Gilui, to the Makablim. It's not the Pele. The Pele is only where you're miyuchad with the Helem Ha'atzmi. Then it can be called Pele. But when you come down, then that Helem Ha'atzmi had a reason. It was in order to get down to the Makablim. So once you already entered that whole Tnua of the Gilui to the Makablim, you're not Pele. On the contrary, you're going down to the Makablim. And Rebbe says that Rebbe lo yitochen. It's not shayat likrois b'shem pele. However, po in our new pshat that we brought down in the Zohar Kodesh, we see that the Zohar teaches us a ki yosisa fele, full stop, and then it says ki yosisa ale. And we saw that ale was the in of Chokmah, how it's going down at the Bina, and that's the in of Chokmah, how it's Gilui. That's the whole in we're talking here. So we see that the Pasuk does two things. It doesn't just say, ki yosisa fele, al tikre fele ela aleph or something. It's not shoel dinim from Pele. It says ki yosisa fele, and that means, what does that mean? Ki yosisa aleph. In other words, that the aleph itself is Pele. So that's l'chera, a still of what we just said. וכאן מפרש החוק ונקרא פלא מצד עצמי דווקא. מצד עצמי meaning how it is בגולוי. והכוונה דווקא בבחינת הגילוי. והיינו בבחינת הגילוי דחוכמה נקרא פלא. So that's like a stirrer. It's like a stirrer מנהיו. פלא means the Helem Ha'atzmi. And here we're saying that the chokma had already golui in Atzilus for the Makablim Mamish or the bechina taktoina shebechokmas timora, which in Yoni is a mocher for Chokma Gluya. He said, that's already not Pele. He said, oh yes it is. That's called Pele. Pele, that you made a Pele, Ki Asisa Aleph. Then there's a titles on that you made a inifan. You have an Aleph. What Aleph is a inifan open at the beginners open of a limud de Chokma, the Gilu of Chokma Mamish. How it's already become a shoyrish of limud into Bina, almost. Yeah, the Chokma who is that in and of the limud of Chokma who is Pele, or is it in from Pele? So the Rebbe says, how can that be? Now, even though the Zohar is Mefarish, I think when the Rebbe says Mefarish, he doesn't mean the etzem shot on the kasha we just asked. It means that he's mafarish. What sort of way does Chokmah become Aleph? It becomes like a teacher. Or mafarish al zeh. Aleph base is Aleph Bina. That the word Aleph and then it's followed by base, but that's the Seder, as it were, of the Limud. How does that work? Yeah, Aleph base means Aleph Bina. That the base is like a reference to Bina. And I've spotted in some places that Bina is already like a bias. It's built together of protim. Shezeu b'chinas hagilui de chokma shebo miyeseid abo labina. That's well known that which is nimshach the bina is only what we call yeseid abo. It's only the lower midas sheba abo, but they are the shurish of the ashpur of the nekuda b'hei cholah enters into into Bina. In other words, at the higher aspects of Chokhmah, they're not the Nakudas HaSkola. As one on, that the actual Nakuda, the Baruch HaMavrik, well, that's called Yesod, or sometimes it's called Nahi B'Chokhmah, Neitzach Hoid Yesod. In other words, it's already the lower Inim, which is Shai to Ashpur. So he said, Nakudas HaSkola, Shezeo P'chinas Seichel Golui, that's already revealed. Notice the whole theme here is Gilui. Shebo Lidei Asoga Dabina. It reaches the ultimate tachlis of Gilui, which is Mamish Asoga, Eitzel Adam. Yeah, Harizeh Mipchinas Pele Davke. So the Rebbe says, what the Zohar is saying, but the fact that the Zohar first of all quoted the Posik B'Shleimus, and then it touched it again, and it said, Zeh ki Zevajesh Kosuki Asisa Pele. Asisa Elev is a sin that both things are there. It's Taka Asisa Pele, but it is the union of Aleph base, the union of Chokhmah, how it goes down into Bina, that's Pele. So the Rebbe says, Ulechoira ena mover, Eichu Pele. How is a thing which is already becoming Gilui into Bina, how is that Pele? Me'acha shehu b'chinas Gilui. It's revelation. Ve'imu b'chinas Pele, are Pele moir ala hester. Pele is mara on something which is hidden from you. Yeah, and therefore we say b'mufla mimcha al tidosh. We state it's not a posik, it's actually from the Sforim HaChitzeni. B'mufresh mimcha al tacher, or b'mufla mimcha al tisha, or al tidosh. The inner from Pele is a door which is model from and hidden from you. How can Pele be that which is nimshach in the Bina? It can't be. It's two inyanim. First of all, Asisa Pele is one inyan, and Asisa Aleph is another inyan. So there will be no. This was the pshat. If you look carefully in the Zohar, that it runs them one into the other, is assuming that even how Asisa Aleph, on the Aleph becomes a limud, a lupana, into Bina, that is Pele. So he said, how can that possibly be? So he says, Achzeu Shemavaya, he said, the fact that the Zohar Kodesh goes on and brings me a whole piece about what an Aleph looks like, he said, in that we have to say, is hidden the teretz of this shaila. Avo, he says, where are we? Ach, zeu shemavaya ba'imrei, avo diukna da aleph, ihu tlas sitrin, that the shape or the form of an aleph is 3 lines. Dehine yedua the tzia tmunas aleph, yesh boi beis yuden. Yud aleph lamaila, V'yud aleph lamata, v'kav be'emtza amachava beis hayuden. That's the one on the famous story in Hayom Yom that the Alter Rebbe called in the Malam that he wanted to teach. He wanted him to teach his son. The Alter Rebbe said that he doesn't have time, so therefore he's making you a shliach to teach his son Torah. And he said the first thing you have to teach him is aleph. So the Alter Rebbe said a yud, an aleph is a yud l'mayla, and a yud l'mata, and a kav be'emtza hamachabra. You guys are not familiar. So he said the yud l'mayla, this is the Avish, I think he said. And the yud l'mata, this is a yidl, he's makabel from the Avish's yud. And the vav be'emtza is a kav from Yerushalayim. That's Mechaber, the both of them together. They state now. We're going to see something. Huh?
And then he gave another nusach.
Huh?
And then he gave another nusach. True.
Not Yerushalayim?
No, and then he touched it out another one.
Amunah.
I think Yerushalayim is the second one.
There's another one.
I think this is Amunah.
Another story about the Yud.
No, that's
the same Yom.
Yud Aleph Lamata v'kav be'emtza hamachava beis hayuden. V'hina Yudo Elyon hu b'chinas Chokhmah sheba Chokhmah shemekavu me'or hakeser v'chamesh kosu v'chokhmah me'ayin timo. Now Chokhmah sheba Chokhmah, that means already in Chokhmah Gluya, Chokhmah sheba Chokhmah. That's a pshat here. And that means what we said before, that Chokmah is in from Re'iyah. The Emersa, how do you call it, Al-Yoinias. Shebechokmah is the in of Re'iyah, and in which Alamayla me Seichel. Afil Gilui. Van Seichel Nakuda, because the Nakuda is only Nahi. It's only a Sod Shababa. And we're the high in Yonim, and they're Makabel from the Ayin Dekesa, Chokmah me Ayin Timot. And they're Makabel from Chokmah Stimor. Over there Makabel from the lower aspect of Chokmah Stimor, how he's already a Momutza to the spheres and Atzilas. And the truth of the matter is, it's mashma in certain Drushim that also is through a parasol. And therefore we say Chokmah me Ayin Timotei, because if it were just a Ashpoya, Yebederach Yerida, or Ilava or Mashu me Chokmah Stimor, then it wouldn't be me Ayin Timotei. Now the infant the parasol turns it into like me Ayin Timot. Me Ayin Timotei. Yeah, but who brings Nakuda Iloa the Chokmah? Now it's one on the two inyonim in Nakuda. It's one on the two aspects or two forms of Nakuda. One Nakuda is called Nakuda Iloa. What that means is that everything is there, but it's so tremendously intense that it's not able to be mispateo bishlav. No, it's only the intensity of how it's called everything in one. Beetle otzum to the atzmas. Therefore, it's like one which is koil ribui inonim, but they're not able to be misgala la'esato. Mashin the nakuda, how it comes down into Yesod Abba and goes into Bina, well, that's already open to be opened, in other words, ready to be developed. And that's a function of Bina. The Bina literally undoes all the protim in the Nakuda. That's two inyonim and two madregas in Nakuda. Remember, Nakuda Iloa, well, that's that intense Indian of Nakuda, which despite the protim shaboy, it's not in an even fit pitur for Gilui Klau. And that's what we find, that Chokmah is sometimes a patak. Chokmah is a patak, and sometimes it's a komet. When it's a komet, it is from koimet. Koimet means to close the mouth. In other words, that it's locked, it's not able to give forth. The Chokmah, how it's a patach, it's already to be niftach. It's not niftach mamish b'regazeh, or it's already ready to be niftach. And there's a whole thing when you get to the kavanas from Shefer, where's that? Anani b'merchav ko, or b'merchov ko, where's that? There's a whole different, the Friedrich Rebbe's got a whole beer and a maimah that you're supposed to say merchav ko. By the time you get down that far in the posse, you're already holding by the nakuda, it's already shayat, it's supposed to open down into Gilui. And Ve'ila, the Rebbe, I heard it, I was there, the Rebbe used to say merchov, but that's a comment of the scene from Kesser. That's the from Chokmah, it's still nakuda atzmi, it's called in Kesser. And those the and Friedrich Rebbe says that Al Pia Baal Shem Tov was only Nochen Loima Pedem Tchir Sefer in Patal. A Satan Amam. Satan Amam. Therefore, there's some of the Mashpiyim, and they'll say with a Patal. Of the Rebbe Borok Ro. Ich hope you heard Mamish. Borok. Several times. The Rebbe used to say with the comment. And they state in the Siddur, if you look in the Siddur, it's not a comment. But some people say that was that whoever printed the Siddur didn't know what was written in that Maimon in the Friedrich. Of the Rebbe certainly knew what was written in the Maimon in the Friedrich. Now it became the same Melchor. And that's all in it. And that's the two Nakuda. That's Nakuda Ilo and Nakuda Tato. I want to go funny. It's
which one's the comments? Which one's the patak?
Comments means.
I know which one. Which is good. It's both of them. It's Chokmah Ilo, Chokmah Tato.
Yeah.
Which one is patak? Which is comments?
No. Patak means to open.
No.
That's already the lower Nakuda.
Well, that's the Nakuda.
And that's the Nakuda that's ready to, as it were, come down into his scholars. The Nakuda Iloa is comments was from Famach. It's so intense that it can't open. It's the Etzemina of his scholars. The Etzem Nakudas are Evans killed. Therefore, Koimens will leak Motzet Peh means to do that.
The surah of the comments. There's a patak within the Kuda.
Yeah, with a sort of line underneath it.
Kuda.
Yeah, eina chanamet. Ja, יש לדון גם בזה, אבל let's go further. As the Rebbe, והוא בחינת נקודה אלוהי דחוכמה, ויוד התחתון הוא בחינת יסוד אבא, הוא בחינת מה שהחוכמה, הוא בחינת משפיע, בחינת נקודה אל הבינה. והיינו, א', בינה, das ist הפשט learning and teaching, בינה. והקו שבאמצע הוא ווב קצובש דאבא, והוא הקו שדי מלבוא. No, we don't mean the kav in the normal sense, we just mean kav, we just mean it's a line, which is avov. And therefore that kav is avov, indicating the midrash b'chachma. That's one on there are midrash b'chachma, even though they're not, but there are. And those are avov ketzovis of Abba, and that's what's brought down in Torah and other places, the Inav and Yisrael Sabo, and then there's Yisrael Zutra, Yisrael Sabo Utvuna. You guys are familiar with it because we had it earlier here in the Hemshah. Yisrael Saba, how he links into Tavuna, this is the Midrash B'chol. That's called Midrash B'chol. You have a Nimtza called Shir Tavuna, so Aleph, Miroesha V'Seifai, Uben is a Chochma. It's all Chochma. רק שיודע אלה מבחינת חוכמה של חוכמה, והווב שהוא הקו הוא בווב כתובת שבו, והיודע תחתון הוא יסוד שבו, ועל זה אומר כסיס הפלא. On that he says that that's a פלא. The מבחינת החוכמה כמו שהוא, שהיא מבחינת א', the way it's teaching, and its whole aim is to get down into בינה, דהיינו מבחינת גילוי דווקא, הרי הוא מבחינת פלא. So how can that be? How can we can design? Va'inenu, this is all at the beginning of a teretz. Va'inenu, dehina yudua, the chokma hu b'chinas ma, koyach ma. That the whole inyan for chokma is koyach ma. So there's two ways of explaining that. Either you can say that it's two levels, that there's inyan for koyach and then there's inyan for ma. In other words, that chokma, it's already Yisod Abba, that's already koyach, it's already going down, and ma is the higher madrega. Or you can say that the whole inyan from chokma, its whole koyach, its whole inyan, and its whole oifen function is ma. Yeah? In other words, that kilu chokma be'etem is ma. So we'll see that we're sort of leaning towards that pshat. So he says, De'ina yadua the chokma hu b'chinas koyach ma. Ma hu shem havaya b'milui alefen. The word ma is mem hey 45. Well, that's the Shem Havaya if you write the milui of the letters with aleph, not the yud. The yud doesn't have any aleph in it. Then you write k aleph, vov aleph vov, and then k aleph, and you add them all together with yud vov daled. You add it all together, you get 45. And that's the Shem Havaya b'milui Aleph, and he brings it in the Siddur there on Friday when you say the Pasuk Aliyahu. He brings it down there in the Siddur. Yeshem Havayis Uber Miller Aleph, Ukamaima Milgav, that's how he gets onto it there, and he brings out there, you kafta the tefillin, and then he says Milgav, Shem, Iu Shem Ma. What does he mean Milgav? He means the pnimius of Atzilus. That the whole Atzilus is Chochma, is the pnimius, milgav, mi b'fnim, iu shem ma. Yeah, in other words, that the pnimius of, and later on he calls it oirach hatzilus. It's like the whole way, the whole derech of hatzilus is the shem ma. Shezeu havaya di alefen. Well, that's even if it's shem havaya, how it's literally filled with alefen. V'hainu, the aleph, the chokma, hu b'chinas ma. The fizek from Torah the how do you get to ma, alidei, to take the shem havaya and you fill it with aleph, and there's a statement that the key to ma is a aleph. Ubchinas ma shebechokma zo ubchinas pele. Or that in for ma shebechokma does it the pele. We see that on the one hand, aleph is in for aleph. Yeah, aleph is limud. On the other way, how do you get to the infant ma? Yeah, which is a be'emes pele, is that you get to that through the in and over aleph. Let's kill the kesher. And Mamir said the Rebbe v'hainu b'chinas ma shebegilu ha'chochma lo b'chinas ma the chochma shezo b'china al yoyne shebechokma k'mish kos b'mochim acher ki im ha'kavona al b'chinas ma shebegilu ha'chochma koyach ma. And there was a whole in of chochma how it's a koyach, its in and is ma. You're not eating like we said that Ma is already eating from Kesa and Koyach is another Inyan. No, Davke Hel Chochem is already a Koyach, or how she's a Koyach, she's Ma. How she's Mamish Begolo, in none of those she's Ma. So that explains it to me, but it doesn't yet give me the beer age there, but it just tells me that that's the formula. Amamere, das ist der Inyan Bekitzer Nimrat Adkar. So listen, I just want to take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, to say one or two in Yonim. So what it means is that really the Emes Pele is bittul. As I can tell you. The Emes Pele is bittul. The way you have something that could have been a Matthias. The Chokmah could be a Matthias. It could be a Matthias. And it says it's not a Matthias. I don't know, he says it's not a Matthias. But all he wants to know, what is with the Kavanah? That's Emes Pele. Yoter Pele Mezelonim. And that's what we're going to see. He's going to go now on a whole beer and Toyo. What was the problem with Toyo? What was the problem with Toyo? Toyo was the highest oilers that have ever been. Everything was Tatas Ayofi in Toyo. As they say in Yiddish, because in Toyo it was, how do you call it, Tzag. And Tzag is Oish's gas. You know that. That was so. Toyo was Giluyim, and it, as it were, it wanted to live the Giluyim. It wanted to have the Giluyim and live the Giluyim. On Tikkun is Ma. And Ma just says, what was your will, the Eibishter? The Eibishter will Gilui. He wanted everything should come down. Well, the Gilui is Kol HaDrochim v'Cheskes. Actually, going down into Gilui. No, but if you bottle Be'etzem Mamuz, Bittul Dama, then you can go anywhere. And that's Chachas. That's Chachas. You can go anywhere, you can do anything, as long as he's Makusha to Rebbe, as long as he's bottled Be'emes to the Mitis Anakuda. That's it, man. Thank you, my gentlemen. It's